University YMCA every week on this program. I just want to say a quick thank you. As you all kind of see in the rotating slides beforehand, there's a lot of different campus and community organizations that help us make this program possible. So just a quick shout out to all of them. And then with that, I think we're going to be back the last Friday in September. So I will hand it over to Anne for a couple last announcements, and then we'll get started.
Good afternoon, thank you, Michelle. Welcome to the University YMCA. We're really glad you're here. We're in our 99th year of doing the Friday Forum program, now in a long-time partnership with Diversity and Social Justice Education with their Conversation Café program. So grateful for their partnership, and we're grateful to you for being here. My announcements today are really short and sweet. They are two. One is, I want to introduce Dwayne Banks, Jr. Dwayne, would you stand up and let folks know who you are? Dwayne is a fantastic young man that we're just getting to know here at the Y. He is a recent journalism grad from the master's program in the journalism department. Has an exhibition that we just mounted this week in the gallery next door, and it is beautiful. It's called The Black Gaze, Portraits of Community Through an African-American Lens. There are postcards around. The reception for that exhibition is next week, Thursday, the 23rd, from 5 until 7 p.m. We'll hear more from Dwayne at that time, so we're going to have him just show us who he is today, but really invite folks to come back. We do also want to say a particular thank you to the Macon County Foundation for the support of that exhibition. We really also appreciate your help. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the University YMCA has a tiny little residence hall on our 3rd floor, and we have 5 spaces available for the summer, which is a big deal. We don't usually have space open, so if you know someone who is a male-identifying student, has student status, and would like to live here at the Y for the summer, we do have 5 spaces available. So that's cool. And the last thing is I owe a really big thank you to my friend Sam Smith. Sam is here, Sam's on staff at Cranor Center for the Performing Arts. He's a longtime friend of the University YMCA. He was a board member here for so long, he finally had to turn out. So we're hoping he'll come back at some point. But Sam agreed to moderate today's panel, and we're so grateful for his energy and expertise. Thank you, Sam.
Good afternoon. So happy that you all are here. I wish I had a headlight so I could walk around with my arms fly free. I want to start by saying that this is a conversation cafe, and so I want to invite each of you to think about a question that you might have for our guests, and at some point you can feel free to raise your hand and ask your question if it fits in that moment. So it is a conversation. I want to acknowledge that 2 of our guests are not here, so you can't see them. 2 of our guests are not here, Angela Rivers and Dr. Barbara Suggs, who are the co-chairs of the Champaign County African American Heritage Trail Project. They had some last-minute changes, and they weren't able to be here, but Mr. Robert White, who works with that project, agreed to be here, and he has to dash early, so when you see him leave, that is why. Thank you for being here. And I also want to acknowledge some other folks that are in the space. Christina Crost, who's with the Lumpkin Foundation. Would you just stand up and say hello? Thank you so much. Christina helped to organize a wonderful training here yesterday about untold stories, and it fits very well with the theme for the Conversation Cafe, so thank you so much for that. Stretch Ledford is here, who's a professor of journalism here at UY, who has a hand in the exhibit that you see, and introduced Dwayne Banks already, and my very good friend Ken Salo is here in the space. Thank you so much. Let me ask this question. If you are a student, would you raise your hand? Raise your hand nice and high. All right, thank you so much. If you are a historian, would you raise your hand? Historian, storyteller. Okay, great. If you've ever visited the Champaign County Heritage Trail, the Cairo Heritage Trail, the Macon County Heritage Trail, would you raise your hand? Oh, fantastic. That's beautiful. Okay. And again, sort of feel free to ask any questions. If you are a faculty or staff at U of I, would you raise your hand? Okay, wonderful. If you are a community member, someone that lives in Champaign or another community, would you raise your hand? Great, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you. I also want to say that this panel came together, we use that term about making sausage, right? So this was definitely a sausage making thing. We had some breakdowns in communications, and not everyone got the invitations, and so we are, we'll call it improvisation. We are improvising, but when those things happen, when those things happen and communication is not great, we as adults, we take responsibility for those things. And so I want to blame Jim Interwall. All of the communication, all of the issues, all of the difficulties that we've had there. So what we're going to do is essentially allow these folks who've been doing this work to talk and to tell their stories. We have questions for them, but I think most importantly, we want to give them an opportunity to let you know who they are and what it is that they do and what they love about what they do. So I'm going to start with Champaign County since Robert has to leave early, and maybe just say hello, tell folks who you are, and what your involvement is with the Champaign County Heritage Trail.
Good afternoon. As Sam said, my name is Robert White. I'm the trail manager for the Champaign County African American Heritage Trail. As a trail manager, what I normally do is do things like this, building relationships, exposing people to the African American Heritage Trail. Our overall goal is preservation of history. This is history that's essentially in our backyards, and the community as a whole, there's a rich history in this community within Champaign County, and our goal is to not only preserve that, but expose it to as many people as we can. So within my role, I do collaborations with organizations, school districts. I also lead the tours and host events catered around the Heritage Trail, or just anything related to preserving history. So that's what I do.
I'm going to, any questions for Robert? This PIN number? Robert, could you tell us maybe just a little bit about the history of the Champaign County Heritage Trail? How did it get started? Where the ideas come from?
So the Champaign County African American Heritage Trail kind of came into fruition early 2020, around the time that George Floyd was murdered. Angela Rivers had a mural that used to be on 4th Street, 4th and Park. There was a prominent African American in the community that approached Angela and Jane DeLuce, who was the CEO of Experience Champaign-Urbana, about how impactful this mural was. And they wanted to do something more than just make an Instagram post or put a flyer up in their window. So essentially they were going to do another mural. They're going to actually try to recreate Angela's mural. However, they unearthed all of this historical context of the African American community within Champaign County, and then that led them to do a trail. So from 2020 to 2026, we have over 24 trail markers, 5 murals, 62 points of interest on the website, all highlighting African American achievement, prominence, civil unrest, activity within Champaign County. And so just from Angela and Barbara's research, their historians, their research was able to provide the majority of the history. And with that, now we're getting approached by other people from Champaign County that have stories that have yet to be told. And so now we're able to tell those untold stories through the Heritage Trail.
Very cool, thank you. So why don't we go down and maybe just do introductions. Who are you? What's your relationship to the trail project? Where's your trail project? Maybe where did it come from?
I bring you greetings from the southernmost tip of Illinois. Good afternoon. My name is Don Patton. I'm from Cairo, so probably, thank you very much. You're probably wondering,
There's at least one other person from Cairo here.
you're probably saying, well, where is Cairo? Well, we're south of here, 235 miles. We're at the confluence of the mighty Mississippi River and Ohio rivers. We call it the confluence. And we're tons of great history. And so my love of history has brought me to this point. I'm retired. I've been retired from SIU University School of Medicine. I was a pre-med counselor. By profession, I'm a licensed clinical professional counselor. Growing up, I had a love of history. I can recall in the 6th grade. I know you don't. Do I know you? Is your father, he works at SIU? Oh, okay, I thought I'm sorry. So I'm a lover of history. So in the 6th grade, I loved geography, I loved history. Hey, Magdalena.
Magdalena is one of our professors in urban planning who does public engagement work, and she's connected with Cairo project.
So where I'm going with this, so once I retire, I'm able to work on things that I love. I have a bachelor's in administration of justice, and so I'm tying administration of justice and counseling, healing, restorative justice, all in one. And so it's important for me to tell the stories of our town, Cairo, Illinois. Historic preservation is about 3 elements. It's about narrative, it's about the stories, it's about the landscape, structure, brick and mortar, but it's about those connections, how it makes you feel, the takeaways. Recently, I was telling Magdalena and Joseph about 3 weeks ago, that prompted me to enter the ride from Selma to Montgomery. It was March 21st. They celebrated the 60th anniversary of Bloody Sunday. And actually, it's the 61st year. I signed up for it last year, and my brother-in-law and 2 other friends, but they predicted a severe storm, so they called off the event. But we participated this year, and what brought me to that is the location, the narrative. I recall in the 6th grade watching John Lewis being beaten. And then that following, 3 years before Bloody Sunday, I walked out of my house one day in the projects, Superior Courts. I saw John Lewis. He was there, he was a freedom fighter with the Student Nonviolent Organization, trying to integrate the restaurants and those sort of things. I say all that to say this. Historic preservation is important. Preservation lives within people. It's important to acknowledge those untold stories that have never been talked about for the purpose of education, for the purpose of healing, for the purpose of, if you're talking about progress, passing the baton on. And that was my takeaway from my bike ride of 51 miles, by the way.
Whoa.
And it started at 6:30 in the morning. The DJ was out there. boots on the ground. And we finished probably like 4 hours and 15 minutes. We stopped 4 times, 10 minutes apiece, but it was a great takeaway because when I left that, I thought about the location, thought about the memories, and that connection. So much, my wife went with me as well, so much that before we left, we went back and stood on the bridge, took pictures and absorbed it. Well, later I'll talk about our 12 sites in Cairo. You know, Cairo has a tremendous amount of history that is good, that is ugly, and it's bad. And we need to talk about those kinds of things.
You know what? I'm going to ask everyone a question. You mentioned, you keep talking about this bridge, and you also mentioned this term Bloody Sunday. How many of you are familiar with that term Bloody Sunday and the history? Now, if you raise your hand, I might call on you. All right, who would like to just sort of tell us what that is? Anybody? What was Bloody Sunday?
Somebody up there.
All right, thanks, Robert. What was Bloody Sunday? Right? What was Bloody Sunday? A whole bunch of hands went up. Anybody? One brave soul? Just one? I can wait. I've had lunch. Okay, great. One brave soul. I'm coming. I am coming. Coming. Wonderful. Yes.
Hi, Sophia. Yeah, hi. I just know bits and pieces, but generally it's about what it sounds like. I'm not sure for what reason they were going from, was it Montgomery to Selma?
From Selma to Montgomery, right?
From Selma to Montgomery, but it was the Independence Bridge.
Exactly.
That a lot of leaders, including Dr. King, right?
I don't think on that particular day he was not there. It was
No.
John Lewis.
Okay. There a lot of rights leaders were attempting to cross that bridge, and there were authorities on the other side who were determined that they were not going to make it across the bridge, and they were beaten back by the police authorities.
Exactly. It led to the civil rights voting and civil rights and also the Voting Rights Act 64 and 65.
So that particular incident sparked the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act. And of course, we're in this dialogue now where we're watching the federal administration rolling back the Civil Rights Act. So thank you so much for filling in that piece of history.
Before I close, behind me you have our website. If you go to it, it's historicalcarol.com. And on that, you will find information about our preservation efforts, including we're a relatively new organization, only 6 years, but we raised $20,000 to support our cause in various buildings in our community. One of the things that we're allowed to do, the kinds of things that we're doing, we have a great board, but our superpower is that we have great collaborators. We've worked with Landmarks Illinois, we've worked with Illinois Humanities, I see Farouz there, and then my partners that are sitting with me today, Magdalena, University of Illinois Urban Planning, Joseph Alschuler here in architectural design. We get where we get to by reaching out and collaborating. And so I'm gonna stop here. I can talk all day, but I just want you to go to our webpage, and on there you will see, I think it's down right now, but eventually it'll be up, I think, by Monday. You will see our whole project in terms of the Cairo African American Heritage Trail, the cultural mapping that we were able to do, signages, and all of that. So I'm gonna stop. Thank you.
Thank you. So one of the things that you might not notice is that this group of people, including Robert, who just left, although they all have been working on heritage trails, most of them are meeting each other for the first time. So similar to learning something about Bloody Sunday and Edmund Pettus Bridge and filling in that little piece of history, this is part of the improvisation that's happening right here. Joseph, you want to introduce yourself? How did you get involved? What do you do? Why does it matter?
Good afternoon, everyone. So great to see everyone here and be in community with you all. My name is Joseph Altschuler. I am a professor in the School of Architecture in the Department of Landscape Architecture and a resident of Urbana. And I'm really proud to be a collaborator with Don and also Magdalena and many other stakeholders in Cairo, Illinois on the Cairo African American Heritage Trail, which officially launched this past December at Cairo High School. So we're really excited about that, and the project has many components which we'll talk more about. I come to this work as a partner and a collaborator with a particular interest, as many of us have, but a very deep interest in place, and a very deep interest in the ways that we inhabit and interact with the built environment. And heritage trails and African American heritage trails in particular, I think are so important in how they remind us that history is not the same as the past. I think there's a common misconception. I think that history is something that's in the past, but history is actually something that happens in the present. History is the way we remember things in the past, and it's the way we write new stories about the futures we want to see. And I think African American heritage trails are a really amazing way that we do that. By telling sometimes stories that have been erased, sometimes stories that have not had the volume turned loud enough onto them, stories that have been around but that need to be amplified. And I'm interested in the ways that we do that not only through words and through text, which is a really important way and an essential way, and one of the pieces of the Cairo African American Heritage Trail that Magdalena can tell you more about is the oral history component. So words and stories and audio, but also the way we think about the built environment. And I think one hallmark of heritage trails is the markers, the sort of physical signs that point our attention to sites, sometimes erased, sometimes still existing, sometimes modified in different ways. Signs and markers that point our attention, sometimes the things we maybe walk by every day but take for granted or don't realize that there's an underlying story there. And one of the things I'm really excited to be collaborating with Don on is to think about how we can also think beyond only signs. Signs are really important, the markers are really important, but how we can also think about how a marker can become inhabitable, an inhabitable marker. Can we create infrastructure, social infrastructure in the built environment that allows us not just to see and to read, but also to sit, to linger, to reckon with, to inhabit. We're working on some design ideas with Don where we're thinking about windows, signs as windows that really point our attention and let us sit and linger on a site for a much longer duration, to make it not just something you read, but something that you can gather communities around. And that's something that we have a lot of work to do, but I think we're particularly excited, and something as an architect, as an educator here, and as a practicing artist, designer, and architect myself, I think there's just so much future potential and energy for African American heritage trails and heritage trails of all kinds to think about them spatially as much as through stories. So thank you for having me, and excited to continue the conversation.
That was a real dope distinction between history and the past, and this idea of thinking about the history as history being present. So I heard just yesterday someone quoted Baldwin. It was Ted Williams, was here, in the Lumpkin meeting. He quoted Baldwin as saying, "We are present in history, and history is present in us." And yesterday, Jim was talking about the history of the Y building, and in its long history, it has been a site these kinds of conversations, and it's been a site for supporting all kinds of people from all different places around the world. And so, you know, you might think you came here because there's like really delicious lunch on Fridays at the Friday Forum, right? But there's a reason that this place exists as a welcoming place and that would feed people. And it's interesting to think about how you are in that history of the Y being an open place. Like, how did you get here? And what was your Edmund Pettus bridge that brought you to the University of Illinois and brought you to the YMCA? That's a beautiful story as well. Next, you want to introduce yourself, young man? I've been chasing this guy for like 3 years. That's great.
Let's get some energy. If you can hear me, let me hear you say yeah. Yeah. All right, let's try it again. If you can hear me, let me hear you say yeah. Yeah. All right, that was kind of like my icebreaker. I am Antonio Burton. Artist name is Tony Picasso. I am a freelance artist and activist for the Macon County African American Heritage Trail. I am the creative director for that. So right now we have 2 sign markers that are completed. We have the Parsons site sign and the Ellsworth Dansby Jr. site sign, also accommodated by a mural as well that I had the pleasure of making. I like working behind the scenes, but my partner here, Natalie Beck, I know she pulls me out, so I'm here to just share my insight on how I came about collaborating with the individuals on our committee for the design. Our committee is majority African American as well, so even with having a platform, we do get to voice our opinion and be ourselves on that committee. So with that, it's been a pleasure for it. With creating designs and learning some of the things that are behind this, it brings me, how can I put it? It brings me joy, yeah. It brings me joy having a grandmother. So I was one of those kids where my mother was very active, but I always did community stuff with my grandmother. And my grandmother was the president of the neighborhood association. She was a Sunday school teacher. She was a part of NAACP, all those things. So I grew up being one of those community kids who pastime was like having boots on the ground, knocking on the doors. Shoot, when Barack Obama was a senator, we were passing out campaign pins and things like that for him. But I say that to say that within that process, I had the opportunity to have a grandmother who always talked about the rich history in Cairo, Illinois, and being a part of Macon County. And being a part of this project allowed me to open up, my mind to things that are not being portrayed in our community a lot. When you pull out the rich history of Macon County, you learn that there were a lot of African Americans that were influential on all levels, whether it be service, whether it be politics, whether it be great businessmen, whether it be in education, whether it be in serving our country. We have a lot of rich history there that's being uncovered, and I feel what it did some benefit to me knowing and seeing present as I grew up, but being a part of the committee now and being able to place and create things that my kids can look at, and potentially my children's children can see. I love being a part of that rich history and being present in history, right? And Macon history, Macon County Macon history. Other than that, man, it's so much I could say, but I really want to hear from you guys. I like interacting. Does anybody have a question or a thought or idea, particularly to our website? If you go there, it's rich upon detail. If you don't, is there any direct question you want to ask me as an artist?
Just the 2 signs that you did up, Parsons, which is a famous name for Lucy Parsons. I don't know if it's related to her or something.
No, it's James B. Parsons. James B. Parsons is actually one of the first nominated, African-American judge for the district, U.S. district, but he also was an educator in Cairo, Illinois as well. So that's kind of why we brought that rich history. And there's a school named after him. So that's why we kind of picked him as a mile marker and a sign to talk about. And then on the back of the sign, it talks about the rich history of educators, black educators that were in Macon County as well. So yeah, Judge James B. Parsons is the Parsons trail sign. Yep. No questions? Oh, one in the back? Okay. You gotta get them, Sam. You gotta get them. There you go. Yeah.
Thank you, all of you. I do have a question, like, for everyone, and then also, like, specifically as an artist,
Okay.
for you. So I'll just throw them out there. In my experience, kind of navigating university spaces, and I tend to hang out with indigenous folks. So I spent some time at the Native American House. I try to go to their events, and the contrast between the way that you see people practicing cultural values and creating what Dr. Charlotte Davidson calls a home space there, versus the contrast of seeing people just kind of read land acknowledgements and not understanding their meaning and putting action behind them. That disconnect is very jarring for me, and it's become more jarring the more that I've learned. I've been coming to these, and just every time I'm here, it opens my mind. So I'm curious from your perspective, like, what as students can we be doing in order to promote awareness about the trails, about the history behind the trails? That's not just lip service, something that will actually get people out there, will get people to wrestle with the actual truth. That we're, like you were saying, we walk by these things every day and we may not even necessarily recognize their significance. So, like, what could we be doing here? What do you wish, would happen here on campus, where there are so many students who are here to learn these important stories?
Yeah, man, I'm glad you asked that question. One of the things that we can't run away right now from is AI, okay, technology. I think the initiative that students can take here at the university, especially those who are around organizing, getting a group of your friends, going to the actual markers, and posting a video about the rich history there. Like literally taking a social media account, going and reading word for word from the sign if you choose to do so, or showcasing the QR code that's on the signs when you go to the actual sites. That will do great justice of getting those involved, because a lot of the interest with knowing about it is actually knowing about it or being exposed to it. So you as a student here at the university, if you take the time with a group of friends, however you choose to, just go to one of the sites and actually read the mile marker and take a picture there, and then voice your opinion about it. Like, we want to know, like, hey, when you read this, did you understand it? When you looked at the design of it, did the design make sense? Did it flow? Did it flow right? And initially just going and actually visiting and reposting and posting on your social site and talking about it, that's a good way to interact, because that's why it's being created. It's created for conversation. It's created to be seen. It's created to be exposed. So please expose the signs and the sites.
May I respond? Yeah, great job, Antonio. Just quickly, one way you could go to our website, and you can find there our 20 oral history interviews. And the way I look at oral history is a form of activism, okay? And those 20 people are over 60 years old, so that means they've experienced it. One young man, he's 84, and he talks about his grandparents being enslaved. And so it can, you could call a group of individuals together, an organization, and maybe, check out some of those kind of oral history archives.
Just real quick, I would just mention a couple of things right here. Is in Dwayne's exhibition next door, there are a number of individuals who are actually really connected to the Heritage Trail here in Champaign County, and those are living individuals. There are beautiful photographs of them next door with some information about those individuals. So one cool thing you can do is go next door and really look at the exhibition. The other thing is connected to that. The Art of the Y Committee will this summer be running at least one sponsored tour to the Champaign County Trail, leaving here from the Y as a connection to this art exhibition. So watch for that too.
Yeah, that was a good.
Sorry.
You want to introduce yourself?
I'm Magdalena Novoa. I'm assistant professor at the Department of Urban Planning here at USC. I'm also a board member of Landmark Illinois, and that's how I met Don, actually. been a very interesting work we've been doing wearing both hats. Well, all the work that I've been doing before I started here in academia, it's been about place-based memory. I'm from Chile. I have been working there with different communities connected with our last time dictatorship. So survivors of the dictatorship or relatives of the dictatorship, and helping them to memorialize places where atrocities and human rights violations have been completely erased from landscapes. So finding ways to reconstruct memory, although you can't, memories through art-based research, and also like similar methods that we've used in Cairo too. The work that we've been doing in Cairo has been particularly important for me because although I keep working with the people in Chile, it's been a critical way for me to connect to the history of Illinois and the place where I'm inhabiting to and bring honor to this place that has welcomed me, including God. But what I wanted to say regarding your question is that I think it's so important as students and as scholars to really claim and demand that in our classes we get classes that are inclusive and that tell their little stories. I think that's also true about preservation, about history, but really about any discipline. I think preservation, for example, for a very long time has been telling a story or constructing history in a way that emphasizes white's history and also painting that history as a happy and positive history. And I think the work that we've been doing with DOMS organizations, it's not telling only sad histories, it's telling the nuances of history, but reconstructing history that is true, not that leaves part of history aside. And the oral histories has been super critical in being able to identify the places that we have identified as landmark, even places that don't exist anymore. But through the science, we can try to reconstruct it through our memories. But also recreate or not recreate, but construct a different type of history that then we can learn and teach in our classrooms. The history of Cairo, I teach urban history and theory in urban planning, and the minute that I put a foot in Cairo, or really I met Don through Zoom, because that's the truth. I was in awe thinking like, this town, that is the southernmost town in our state, can tell the entire history of the United States from colonization until the present. You don't need to go to New York or even to Chicago to understand what has happened throughout history. And that's what I've been doing in my current class, for example. So I think pushing our professors and our colleagues to teach those stories in the classroom and to create studios in architecture, for example, about buildings that have different kind of stories is really critical. And that's really our power to push for.
Thank you so much. I would correct Magdalena on one area. I'm from Brooklyn. I think you do need to go to New York. But that's just me. Natalie, would you please, Macon County Registrar, how did you start this work?
Good afternoon. It's great to be back on campus. I am an alum of the journalism program here. And I will tell you, and I have a master's from here as well, and that what you learn here you will carry with you. So I first became exposed to this work in my studies here, the SDR federal program that he did where he sent interviewers out to interview people whose stories had never been captured. And that really is where my passion came. And then art and the field of Community Foundation, we started working with the Lumpkin Foundation and on Untold Stories. And again, that just lit for me, why are these stories not being told? And more importantly, when they are captured, Why are they not being preserved? And so I would ask a question of you. If you can name both sets of your grandparents, would you raise your hand? First and last name. And can you name your great-grandparents? First and last name. See how the hands immediately go down. And these are the reason you're here. And this is your shared history. And when you think about the Black community and what they fought to preserve their history, and no one asks their story, and they're forgotten. If we're forgetting our own ancestors and cannot name them, cannot name what they sacrificed to put us here at university, we owe them to go home and ask your parents or research that. And that's what I owe my community. I owe all the people that came before us the chance to have their stories told and to have them told them correctly. And that's what we've really learned on the trail. One of our signs honors Ellsworth Dansby Jr. He was not a pilot for the Tuskegee Airmen, which we found out. His story had been mistold. He was the lead mechanic. Even more important, he kept all the pilots in the air. But his story had been lost, and now he is one of the markers on our trail, and he is our next sculpture, being honored by Preston Jackson. His sculpture is currently being bronzed in Chicago and will be installed this May. So that is the work we do, and I will tell you, most importantly, and then we'll go back down the line, when you see something you like in another community, bring it home. We came here, we visited your trail, it is amazing, and we said we want that in Macon County. We need it. If you look at the signs, you'll be like, wow, she didn't really change anything. I did not. Our signs are exact duplicate. We use the same sign company, we use the same format. Antonio puts his flair on it. It is my dream that these trails become like the Looking for Lincoln trails. They deserve that. They deserve to go clear across the state of Illinois. And that is why we're here today.
Let's go. Thank you. And I know Don wants to make a comment. I love that the thing you said, if you see something you like, bring it home. And so I would, in response to your question, think about all of the histories of this place, all of the peoples that have inhabited this place, including your people and your story, asking where is that represented as a woman, as a person of color, as a queer person. Where can you see that, hear that, experience that history? And it's important that others know that history. Don, did you want to chime in? Yes.
Well, I'm noticing we don't have a Saginaw County representation, and I don't think we should leave it to the Lincoln Library to do the history. Somebody else should step up. And in that marker, there should be that district that was attacked in 1905 that led to the NAACP. And an important side note that never gets reported is Sonia Massey's family was one of the ones that were dispossessed at that time. Her family got a settlement for her killing, but they should have got a settlement for their displacement.
We've been talking about, Magdalena, Joseph, and I have been talking about oral history. Is it possible we could pull up for about a minute and show one of the oral history on our website? Just about a minute. We're just going to do about a minute or so. So if you go to this website, Reverend Jared Ewell, this is one example of the oral history program.
few days ago, February 3rd, I turned 74 years young. Thank you. Well, I was born here in Cairo, February 3rd, 1951. I lived in Pyramid Court, which we call the Projects, which is currently torn down. Grew up in Cairo, went to school in Cairo, graduated from Cairo High School class in 1969.
So I just wanted to give you an example of our oral history. There are 20 of those, and one department we left out who could not be here today is Julia Renneman. She's an assistant professor at SIU Journalism School, and she's also a she's a photojournalist and a Pulitzer Prize photojournalist. So I just want to highlight that. So are there any other questions for the group here?
I just love the upgrade on, with having all the oral histories right there on your, at your website. I have many times reposted on Facebook about libraries where you can check out people and sit down and chat with them. And there he is.
Thank you.
First of all, thank you all for the great work that you're doing. I do have one question. One way that we continue to preserve or pass on our history, our stories, is by incorporating youth. So I'm interested to hear how you all have incorporated the younger generations into being griots and carrying on these stories.
Yeah, I got you. The two sites in Decatur are actually at the elementary school. So the James B. Parsons has an elementary school where the site of his historical significance, and then African American educators in Macon County historical significance about that. I wanted to rap, I'm sorry. So just so you know, I'm a rapper as well. That's a whole other anyway.
Do you think, bro?
No. We'll say that for another time. We'll say that for another time. But the kids that are playing at these playgrounds, they see these signs every day. So they get to see something, ingest the information, see a person that looks like them. The demographic aptitude, the other one's a magnet school, so it's K through 8th grade as well. The demographic there is majority African American. So right off the bat, you have two sites in Macon County where kids are seeing, touching, and ingesting these things every day. Looking at somebody other than the typical scenario of what it is to be black and work these jobs. Growing up in my neighborhood, you either seen somebody that was a street person that was working doing their thing, a CNA, or they worked at a factory. Not every day that you hear about a person being head of maintenance for the military and working on planes, or a person being the first appointed U.S. judge, or a person being a savvy business mind. One of the sites or the signs that we have that we placed this year about a very, very savvy businessman, Hugh Singleton. So you'll get to see that research. But we have those markers placed right where youth can adjust and ask questions. And then only on top of that as well, at Ellsworth Dansby Jr., I'm actually a middle school math teacher there. So I get kids that ask me questions about, hey, Mr. Burton, did you make this sign? And why did you make this sign? And I get to see in real time how it impacts youth. So we do, we do have the youth that are talking and judging and getting to see it. And not only that, when I talk to them, I tell them, hey, this could be a job or something you do in the future as well.
I just want to add on the flip side, it's very intentional, the signs are there, because when we take tours, they're also seeing Black youth in school in a very positive light, thriving, which if some of them have prejudices, we're able to counter that in our community as well. So those two sites were selected for those reasons.
And for our project, that's a challenging question I wrestle with every day. Sustainability. How can we pass this baton? Now, one of the neat things we did when we launched launched our program on December 5th last year. We had it at the school on a Friday evening at 5 o'clock. We integrated our program with the Cairo School District. The superintendent was involved. A senior in the high school gave a welcome. The children was around Christmas and they did a quick Christmas carol kind of play. The important thing is that we're trying to bring along the young people because at 75, we're going to have to pass the torch. So, yeah, that's a good question.
Okay, I think we're going to take, we've got just a few minutes left. I think we're going to take maybe just one more question. Stretch has a question, and maybe we're going to take 2 questions. But in terms of the question about youth involvement, I would go back to something that Professor Magdalena talked about, which is to charge your scholars, your faculty, with creating public engagement projects like this. Dwayne, who's the photographer of the exhibit, this was his professor, and he shot these photos, and now this exhibit is connected to this sort of larger work. So, I know young students, or young people, who know that the work that you do has value. It has value. And so there are places like the Y here, professors like Joseph and Magdalena that want to bring the value of your work, your perspective, your ideas, your creativity, your brilliance. You're just taking exams and writing papers. There are people here on this campus, in this community, that would love to see you more engaged in work in the world. And I know many of you are already, but even these folks that are sitting around, there are people that would love to have you partner with you, collaborate with you, and work with you. Okay, last question.
Can I say something really quickly? That as part of our project, we also decided that the oral histories, for example, were going to be conducted by local people, and from there, Jasmine and Janet, for example. Jasmine is from Cairo. The Janet will be studying in Carbondale, SIU Carbondale, and Julia also does a lot of work in Cairo with her students. That's one of my future projects that Don doesn't know about yet. But
So you know what, Stretch? We're at time. So what I'm going to do is suggest that we thank our panelists for their work. The Wayne's exhibit is next door. If you have time, please have a look at it. And maybe we can convene over there if people want to hang around and ask questions. But again, thank you all very much for coming. As you can tell, there's so much more for us to talk about. And where's Ann? And did you hear that person over there say that they've been coming here, and each time they come, it sort of opens their mind? Like, what a beautiful testament to the work of these conversation cafes. We really need to keep talking and keep listening to each other. And again, a round of applause for our panelists.